Hello, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Paranormal Podcast. I am your host, John the Bod of the Ghost Hunter Guys. And we got an awesome guest that's lined up here for you guys this evening. But first, I just want to say we had an amazing investigation this past weekend. Robert, myself, Greg, and Justin. We want to thank Billy Wilkerson for his hospitality for allowing us to come down and investigate the Oldstone Jail, the living quarters, and the Historical Society in Franklin, Kentucky. And let me just tell you this right now from some of the stuff that we've gotten, and I'll let Robert listen to, man, we've got some very good stuff that you guys are going to be floored when we release it. But anyway, I want to welcome our guest. His name is Robert Walczak. He's the founder of Ghost Gear Tech, and he's also an engineer by profession. He's received his education from Tennessee Technological University and LSU, and he joins a podcast to talk about his paranormal experiences growing up in a haunted house and creating the popular device known as the music box. We're going to get into all this. So, Robert, welcome to the podcast, and how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Yourself?
Doing great. Glad to have you on here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here. You had my buddy on here not too long ago, Austin.
Oh, yes, sir. Austin's a good guy. He's made some cool stuff, man.
Yeah, he does.
Glad to have
that ITC space.
Glad to see more people out there who's diving into this.
Yeah,
more the better, I say.
It's funny when ghost hunting, we'll say, first got started by all the great grandfathers of ghost hunting. The investigator was known by the devices that they created. So, back in the day, they would create their own gadgetry to try and detect spirits. And if you had a really good gadget, you were pretty popular and probably had good payroll because folks are always calling you. So that was, just an interesting thing to see how that has continued through the years in the paranormal, with people still inventing ways to communicate with spirits.
So let me ask you this. And I asked Austin this last week, and forgive me if I'm dumb on this, but do you think the Frank's box revolutionized some paranormal equipment or no?
I think it was something new and unique at the time, but I think that the technology that we have today and the ways that we have, I think, are equal to or maybe even exceed the Frank's box. But I'm probably going to catch a lot of heat for that because there's a lot of love for the Frank's box, but I just don't know if it was like the holy grail, so to speak. It may have been at the time when it was released, but I think nowadays with all the new ITC equipment out there, we probably surpassed it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, just like me, and I don't like the VR60. I said that many times. I said that even before we went on there, I don't like it. So, interesting fact about you. You grew up in a haunted house where every member had some sort of personal experiences, such as seeing apparitions, hearing disembodied voices, and even experiencing physical attacks. However, when you moved out of the house, this is the twist on this, folks. Paranormal activity stopped. When did you have your first experience, and how did that affect you mentally, possibly?
Well, my first experience goes before I can even remember. So I was really young, and this was before the second story was built onto the house. The way the story goes, my mom tells it to me, that I was in the backyard playing near the door to the house, the patio back there, and she heard me talking to somebody. And at first she didn't think about it. But then after a while, she's like, he's out there by himself. Who's he talking to? So she came out, asked me who I was talking to, and I said, Grandma. And I'm not sure exactly how she responded, but, she was like, okay, went back into the house. Well, she saw out the window, my dad was backing up out of the driveway to go to work. And I took off running down the road behind my dad. And she thought that I was following him. And she quickly ran outside to come out to get me and ran after me. But she heard me yelling for Grandma to come back.
Oh.
So later, she sat me down and she was looking through a picture book of all our relatives. And I just immediately picked out Grandma. I was like, hey, that's Grandma. And that totally freaked her out because she remembers her mom passed away when she was young. So my mom was raised by her sisters. And so Grandma passed away a long time ago. And but she does remember making the wish that her mom could see me. I was her firstborn baby. And then she remembers kind of regretting that thereafter. So that now looking back at the whole house and the whole history of it, I don't know. Was I really talking with grandma, or was there some manipulative spirit that was, just playing the role of grandma to
Mm-hmm.
the young kid? Because later, when my two brothers come to live with us, the house was just a 2-bedroom. I mean, it was small, 1 bath, 2-bedroom. And then we had myself, my sister, and then now my 2 half brothers were coming to live with us. So Dad had to expand on the house. And that's when he added the second story. Now, after the second story was added, that's when things started getting weird. My sister was the first to see an apparition. She saw a little boy, the torso of a little boy come into her room. She, of course, screams. My mom comes running in and she said, "Did you see him? Where did he go?" My mom's looking around for this little kid. I mean, it's a small room, not too many places to hide. So she's looking for the kid. She can't find him. She's like, "Well, what was he wearing?" And she says, "Well, he didn't have legs." And so that was the first incident. Since then, I had seen apparitions. Now, my dad was interesting because he doesn't believe in ghosts, but he tells stories of these shadow crawlers in his bedroom, and he could feel things getting onto the bed with him. Whereas if he would roll over expecting to see my mom coming in the bedroom, and there's nobody there.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, he'll tell you there's no such thing as ghosts. So.
That's the most freakiest feeling ever, because that's happened to me. Like I told you, when I had my attachment, I was laying here asleep and I felt like somebody sat on the edge of my bed. And I mean, I really felt it go down to enough to where it woke me up. And man, that's a freaky feeling. I'm sure your dad saying, "Yeah, there was something there. I know there was something there."
Oh, yeah. He does. But one of the weird things about that, the experiences, that it wasn't always on, you know what I mean? So
sure.
It would wax and wane. And then, we would go through what I would call the lulls, and we would wonder if we were going crazy. Did we really experience these things? And then about that time, it would pick back up again and things would go off the charts for a little while. And I saw it was right after I graduated high school. So I would have been around 19, maybe in my early 20s, somewhere around there. This is where it got really weird, because you got the UFO up there in the background. I was laying in bed. It was during the day, taking a nap, and I was coming out of my nap, waking up. And as I opened my eyes, I saw what looked like a Ghostbusters movie type ghost. It was the luminous green that did not radiate light, but it was lit up, if that makes sense. Kind of like a glow in the dark sticker is the way that I explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was erect and kind of had its eyes closed, and it slowly opened up its eyes and saw that I could see it. And it looked really confused and then slid towards the wall like it was on an invisible track and faded into nothingness. But it looked like an alien. It looked like a gray. It looked like the spirit of a gray alien. And later, maybe not even a year later, I had some pet ferrets, and they were in the cage. And this was at nighttime. And I'm laying in bed, getting ready to go to sleep. And this reptilian-looking alien comes out of the wall. It happens to be the same spot where the other one slid into. So I believe that was the portal that it was coming and going out of.
Yeah.
It came out of the wall, and it went over to the ferrets, and it leaned over and was curious about the ferrets. And it stood up erect again. It's kind of weird, just like the first one, and then slid back into the wall like it was on an invisible track. My mom opened the door to check in on me and asked me, wish me a good night. I was frozen in the bed. I couldn't speak or move or nothing. And then as she closed the door, it came back out of the wall. And when it came out of the wall, this time it was fixed on me and came over and leaned over the bed. And we were looking eye to eye. And it had very human looking eyes. I know the aliens are supposed to have big black eyes, but this one had very human looking eyes, but it had a reptilian like skin to it. And it just faded into thin air after that. I would wake up with bruises and scratches all over my back. And then just various things throughout the years, the TV turning on, going through different stations. I was taking a shower. I was home alone, taking a shower in the middle of the day. I had the bathroom door open. I had MTV playing. I know I'm dating myself. This is back when MTV actually played music.
When it was good.
Yeah, I had MTV playing, and the channel changed. And me being me and having the experience we had in the house, I just assumed the ghost changed it. So I spoke out loud and I said, "Hey, change it back." And it did. It snapped right back to MTV.
Oh man.
And yeah, and that was a very creepy feeling. There was another time I was home alone. My parents were in Tennessee, and I was sitting in the recliner watching TV, and I had a full view of the hallway that would go to the stairway. And I saw two little white dogs run. We had a Maltese and a toy poodle, both white, and heard them run up the stairs. They were not allowed upstairs, so I had to go get them. So I got up to go get them. By the time I got to the stairs, it dawned on me that the dogs were with mom and dad in Tennessee. They weren't here. So now I'm questioning, what did I see run across the hallway? And I heard them run up the stairs because I don't know if it was the way the stairs were made or what, but you could not sneak up those stairs. You heard people go up and down those stairs.
Oh man.
In fact, my sister was home alone, and she heard something running up and down the stairs just nonstop. And it freaked her out so much that she went out and sat in the car waiting for my mom and dad to come home. When they came home, they found her crying in the car. And when they asked her what was wrong, she explained to them that something was going on in the house. Something was running up and down the stairs like nonstop. And she couldn't see anybody, find anybody. There was nobody there in the house. And she went out and sat in the car until they came home.
Jeez, man. I mean, even going through that though, what was going through your psyche? I mean, it had to like mess with you a little bit, of course.
You know, it's kind of weird because as I think back about it, that was normal. Like we didn't know any different.
Yeah.
Like that's just, we lived in a haunted house, you know, and that was normal because my dad also owned property down in the Florida Keys, and he had a home down there on Little Torch Key, and that was haunted. So when we would go down there, we always brought family with us. We never went down to the Keys by ourselves. We always brought some family with us, and they would all experience strange things. One night, I was little, but I still remember it. We were woken to this rattling, pounding sound, and everybody in the entire house convened into the kitchen where the source of the sound was coming from. And we all saw the pots and pans bouncing off the walls, you know, like something was grabbing them and lifting them up and letting go. And it did that for not too long, for like maybe 30 seconds to a minute, enough for us all to witness it. And, that house was crazy. I know there was one instance where my Uncle Walt wanted to buy some property down in the Florida Keys. So he asked my dad if he could stay at his house down there. So my dad mailed him the keys to the house, and Uncle Walt went down. He was living in Michigan too at the time. So he drove down to Florida, and they were supposed to stay for a week while he hunted for some possible property there. And they were only there for a couple of days, and they came back. And Uncle Walt hand delivered the keys to my dad and told him there was something wrong with the house. And my dad was like, "Well, what are you talking about? You know, do I got to get a plumber out there? What do you mean something's wrong with the house?" And he just says, "No, plumber will not solve your problem. There's something wrong with that house." And just gave him the keys back.
Oh, wow. Did he ever say what happened?
Later he did. They heard running up and down the hallway, which is very common. Doors slamming, which was very common. Even other family members had, mentioned that, and whispers and voices. Which is the same thing that we all, witnessed down there in the Florida house. But they took it to about 2 days and they were gone.
So did this experience make you want to investigate the paranormal, or did that come a little later on in life for you?
That came later on because after, I moved out of the house in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I did have one weird paranormal experience after that, but I think it was an isolated incident. Nothing, totally forgot about it. In fact, probably got to the point where I believe maybe it didn't happen. Maybe it really wasn't paranormal, right? Because you start thinking that after you're away from it for a while, and you don't witness it anymore. So I went through college. I got a job. I moved into my apartment, and this is where the one incident happened in my apartment. I was sleeping, taking a nap in my bedroom. It was just like a lazy Saturday. sunlight was still, it was the middle of the day, light was there. And I had this terrible dream, and I woke up, and I was laying on my back, and I woke up and I could see straight out into the hallway. And there was this black ball out in the hallway. At first I thought it was my eyes, right? So I'm like blinking my eyes, trying to get the goo out from sleeping. And I realized that I can see that it's behind the door jamb, right? It's in the hallway. It's not my eyes. It's something there. So I get up, and as I get closer to it, it starts to shrink a little. And then I go to swat at it. And as my hand comes across to swat, it like sucks into the wall. It doesn't vanish. It like sucked into the wall. And I remember it was very fibrous, not like smoke, but like a hair type thing that was all intertwined and just constantly moving around and swirling. It just sucked into the wall. So I started dating this girl that lived in the apartment next to mine. It was a separate building, but they were kind of like attached. One was higher than the other one. So 2 separate buildings, but attached. And we're now married, and she had 2 boys. And the youngest one, he was like fresh out of diapers. He was probably 4 or 5-ish, I guess.
Yeah.
I was putting them to bed, and he wanted me to leave the light on. And I asked, well, why do you want me to leave the light on? And he said, well, I don't want the black ball to come back. And I was like, oh, okay, I've seen that. Interesting. And I've never seen that black ball again. I never saw it again from when I lived at the apartment, just that one time. I think it was transient and probably went from apartment to apartment, Yeah,
it could have just been a pass goer,
Yeah. And then after that, that's been it. The only experiences I've had have been at a couple haunted locations.
So when did you decide to create a device, or even to begin thinking of a device to build for the paranormal field? And plus, what type of device to build too?
Yeah. So I'm a creative individual, and with the engineering background, my creativity, you mix those together and you usually have an inventor, right? So I've invented a lot of different things throughout the years. And but what I started with in the paranormal was I had foot surgery. So I was kind of laid up, couldn't really do much. I was taking time off work, and I was watching the TV shows, and they all had these, gadgets that I thought were very sterile. They were very, very, laboratory like. So I thought, what ghost is going to want to interact with that? So my creativity got going, and I started creating these music boxes. So they're EMF music boxes. This one is a prototype that I was working on, so it's got all the prototype stuff in it. I didn't sell this one, but I started making these music boxes, these little EMF music boxes that, EMF would trigger them and they would play music. And they got really popular, so popular that I could not keep up with it. That took me a long time to make one, because a lot of time went into soldering all that stuff, putting it together. And as you can see on this one, you can't see the LED lights. They're underneath the layer, a very thin layer of wood. So when they turn on in the dark, you can see them, but you can't see them. So I put a lot of love into making each one of these, and I could not keep up with it. And so I decided to hire an engineering firm that could help me mass produce it to kind of, make it scalable, as we would say in the business. And that's when I hired this company, Eminent Labs. What I thought they were based out of Bellevue, Washington. It turns out they're actually based in India. And they basically, in long story short, they lied to me about everything and did not deliver anything. And I gave them, I paid them up front several thousands of dollars. You could have bought a new car with what I paid them.
Jeez.
Okay, for these components that they never delivered on. And I've got it up on my Facebook warning people, and, be warned, they are looking for ghost hunters. They are actively seeking out your Facebook profiles and your LinkedIn profiles, looking for more ghost hunters to scam. And that's exactly what they're looking to do. So they will take your money. They will have you wire it to them. They will feed you enough to get you to believe that they are working on it. But when the time comes and you've had enough, because you're like, it's been a year and a half and this was supposed to have been done in 6 months, where's my product? You will then learn that they don't plan on delivering at all. So I lost out on a lot of that, and that, sent me into a dark spot. So I stopped with Ghost Gear for about a year. I didn't do anything with it. That's when I met Austin. He was buying up a lot of my circuitry that I had, and he was making devices with it because I wasn't doing anything with them. He was buying them up and making stuff. So that was pretty cool. And then I got out of my funk. I got some investors that have invested in the Ghost Gear. So Ghost Gear is now myself and 2 investors. So from those investors, the Epic Box was born. And also right now, the Piccolo is being designed. The Piccolo is the EMF music box. So it's kind of a 2-in-1 device. It's an EMF, 3-axis EMF. So it's more like a tri-field meter. It has a EMF reading right here. Well, this one, batteries are dead on this one. I should have put new batteries in. But it's got an EMF meter here. It's got a 2-watt speaker. It's not a buzzer. It's an actual speaker. Volume adjust and sensitivity adjust right there. So this one we'll be finishing this one up by the end of this week, and I'll be ordering the components for it. The Epic Box is available now. This is a response device. So it has yes and no right here. And this one, the batteries do work in it. So, and you may have seen some videos out there. A lot of folks are really loving this thing. And I'm seeing a lot of YouTube influencers using it. And Kalani Smith is using it. The Foreman brothers have a great video out there of it. Actually, Nick Groff, fingers crossed, I sent him one. So he's not shooting until May. So hopefully he'll use it. And we'll see some videos of him as well. But yeah, that's kind of the evolution of Ghost Gear.
And folks, Ghost Hunter guys are going to be at the Octagon Hall in July. So if anybody would like to help us get an Epic Box, please help out. We would surely like it because, things are tough for everybody right now. So
got to set up a ghost hunting GoFundMe.
Yeah, then somebody slam me for that, So there you go. Can't win for losing. Cannot win for losing. But I'm not giving up on getting an Epic Box, folks. Nay. You shall see. So anyway,
yeah, they sell out. April sold out halfway through April, and I'm already halfway sold out for May, and it's not even May yet. So no. May will probably sell out.
It's not even May, but I'm going to talk to Rob about that. We'll talk about that later. So with all this education that you have with your engineering degree and all that stuff, how has that helped you to put that into building this equipment? So to speak, if anything, possibly.
Yeah. So. I mean, I understand how the devices work, and I don't say that lightly, because what I've learned being in the field is a lot of people don't know how their devices work. They think they do, but I'm sorry to say they don't. So I have created the ultrasonic motion detector, which uses sound pressure waves to detect motion. Well, I would get a lot of people give me flack for that because they're like, well, ghosts don't have any thing for the sound to bounce off of. And in the same breath, they're setting up their paranormal music box. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I would ask them, how does your paranormal music box work? Well, it's a motion detector. Yeah. But how does it detect motion? Well, it just does.
Yeah, it just does.
I'm like, do you not realize that the paranormal music box is a ultrasonic motion detector? That's how it detects motion. It uses pressure sound waves. And then they look at me with this deer in the headlights look. And that's just a sad thing that people don't. And that's where, I guess, with my engineering background is I can look at a device and very quickly figure out not only how it works, but probably how it was put together. Right. And then that helps me to, understand its limitations and when it should be used and where it shouldn't be used. The K2, everyone loves the K2, they worship the K2. I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail for this, but I don't use the K2. Not because I'm, cooler than everybody else, but I actually understand how it works, and I reverse engineered it. And what I learned was So in electronic engineering, there's a thing called rectification. What rectification does is it takes a sinusoidal wave, one that goes positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, and it makes it only positive, which is DC, right? So it turns AC into DC is what rectification does. They do a very poor job of rectification on the K2 meter. And essentially what it does is it will allow negative voltage to make it to that integrated chip. When that happens, the integrated chip goes cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Okay, it either flashes red for a little while or it does nothing for a little while. And if it does nothing, probably no harm, no foul. But if it flashes red, you think you're getting something, you think you're getting a hit when in reality, it's just the K2 meter rectification going, wrong. And the K2 was, you got to remember, it was originally designed to find wires in the walls for electricians.
Yeah.
So they would sweep it across the wall, just like a stud finder. And when it went off, then they knew there was a wire and not to drill a hole there or whatever they were doing, because there was a wire back there. And so, poor rectification wasn't a big deal, right? If he's got it sitting on his toolbox and it flickers, he doesn't care, right? It's only when he's looking at the wall does he care. But in ghost hunting, that does matter because, every little light that flashes on there means something to us.
Mm-hmm.
And if it pegs red, then we think that we've caught one, like we're going fishing and we just caught Billy the big mouth bass, when in reality it's just poor. So I don't use the K2. I use a couple other, and you don't have to use an expensive one, but like the ghost meter, I think the ghost meter is a fantastic. I've taken that thing apart and reverse engineered it. Come to find out, it uses an active EMF sensor, which I think is fantastic. My Piccolo uses active EMF sensing. I'll back up and explain this. So just about any sensor out there, there's a passive and then there's an active. An active is going to give you better results. It's more of your laboratory style equipment. Passive is not. Passive just kind of gets the job done, right? So it's inexpensive. It's cheap. We've all heard of passive infrared, PIR, right? And there's also the K2 uses passive. I'm looking for a circuit board. I know I got one here somewhere. I'm surrounded by circuit boards. K2 uses passive EMF detection as well. So active is definitely the way to go, though, if you get a chance. Tri-field meter uses active. The Mel meter uses active EMF sensing, and it's 2 axis, actually. And the ghost meter is active, and my Piccolo is 3 axis, and it is also active EMF sensing.
I like using a lot of electronics, but man, just like you said, and they're easily manipulated. Some of it, I'm like, say everybody else, you use a K2, you get a hit, you think you've got something. I've been that person before, but I don't know everything about this, and I don't claim that I do.
Sure,
so this is why I got Austin and you and other guys who I can bounce ideas off of and say, hey, what the hell is this? So am I seeing something wrong here or what? Because that makes sense. I'm going to have to pick me up a ghost meter. I'm going to try that. I'm glad you told me that. Because
they're inexpensive and actually, really nice little devices.
And we're so used to grabbing a K2 only because we've seen it on TV.
That's right.
You see stuff on TV, you're like, I've got to get that because if I don't have that, I'm not going to be one of the top ghost hunters out there. That don't mean squat.
And let me tell you about TV stuff, because I catch flack for that. I've had people, they're like, oh, well, you're not on the TV shows, so we're not going to buy your stuff.
Oh my God.
Well, let me tell you, the TV shows are pay to play.
Yep.
All right. I have been contacted by the TV shows and they have offered to use my equipment on the TV show. And these are TV shows you're familiar with. But they would like $1,500 per episode, and there's no guarantee that my device would make it into the final cut. And I'm like, I can't afford it. I'm not Gary Galka selling REM pods hand over fist. I can't afford that. I'm not Bill Chappell selling Ovuluses for $500 a pop. I can't afford that, and maybe I could one time if they could guarantee that it would make the cut, but they won't even guarantee that it'll make the final cut. So I'm like, what am I actually paying for? So that's why. So, the flip side is I go after the YouTube influencers. They have been great. They're really receptive. They love getting the free product, and then they take it and they do an honest review of it. That's the other thing. At least if you get it on TV and you pay to play, they're going to say good things about it regardless, right? Because they're getting paid to.
Yep.
Whereas the YouTube influencers are not, they just got a free device, but they're not getting paid to say good things. But if they don't like it, they won't use it, and if they do like it, they will use it. So that's been my route, has been to use the YouTube influencers. Same audience, most people now are watching the YouTube, channels more so than they are the network channels. And I think that's why the network channels ratings have been tanking, because people are kind of sick of the entertainment aspect of it, and they want the real ghost hunting side of it.
You hit the nail on the head right there, my friend, and everybody's getting away from it. I have been on YouTube, but the only thing, and if I catch flack for this, I don't care. I tell it like it is, man. Stop clickbaiting your videos. I spent the night with a demon. I exercised a demon. I scratched the demon's back. He scratched my. Stop it.
Yeah, they all had the same thumbnail, right? It's the haunted house, the demon, and then
or they got the recorder like this going. I mean, just stop. Okay, I love watching what you do. I know it's entertainment facts. I know that, but stop. Okay. Hopefully our paranormal channel, once it goes live, it'll do great. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. We're doing it for us. We're doing this for us legitimately. We're going to show you what it's like to do a real investigation. It's not what you see in a lot of this stuff. It's fishing. It's basically fishing. That's it.
It's very, very boring. A lot of casting. You're right. It's fishing. It's a lot of casting and not a lot of catching.
Same questions asked maybe 15 to 30, 40 times the same night. And I mean, you just got to keep throwing it out there. But it's worth it. It is worth it.
When you get that hit, when you catch Billy the big mouth bass, it's worth it. That's for sure.
So let me ask you, I'm going to step back here for just a few minutes, and I apologize. The house that you lived in, is it still standing? Are they people still living in it or not?
There are people still living there. And I Google searched it and went down the Google street and looked at it. They have the same Venetian blinds that we had when I lived there over 20 years ago. So nobody's changed those damn blinds. So they're still there after 20-something years.
That's the key. It's the blinds. That's what's holding it all in there, Rob.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's still there. People are living there. And I've often, if I ever get in the black in this whole ghost hunting equipment stuff, I would like to, there's a part of me that would like to reach out to them and say, hey, is it still active? If they say, yeah, there's weird stuff still going on, I would love to go and shoot like a documentary there.
Oh, that'd be cool.
If they would let me.
That'd be awesome. I'm sure they probably would.
Yeah.
It'd be like, hey, look, we can set you up a little fund here, get you some extra cases.
Right. You can get some new blinds.
Oh, I'd donate them $40 and say, here you go. Here's $40. Go get some new blinds. Okay. That's a donation. What's been the most difficult piece of equipment you built? And after seeing it come to life, it was all worth it, man.
Well, the pickle has been a pain, but it's totally worth it. So I started off with that. I started working with an ISU professor, Iowa State University professor, and he designed the EMF circuit. I thought he would design the whole thing, and he could have, but he's a professor, right? So his main job is teaching and doing research for the university. So he took forever to what he promised me 4 weeks turned into almost 18 months.
Oh, wow.
To get that circuit done.
Jeez.
So I took the circuit. It worked. We tested it. I loved it. It was perfect, but I had to find somebody else. So I found another fellow that had over 30 years experience. He has 2 patents to his name. So he designed the rest of the circuit, and it was working great, but there were some aspects of it that I didn't like. And he said, well, in order to, get those parts, that functionality that you want, we're going to need a microcontroller, and I'm not a microcontroller guy. So I said, all right. So, paid him and went my separate ways, and then looked for a microcontroller guy. So now I'm working with a guy that deals with microcontrollers, and he's able to program them. And we are, 3 guys in, a little over 2 years in development. And this thing is going to be awesome because, with my perfectionism, that it's not always a good thing because it's never done right. So even now, like it's what we have now is completely sellable, and I'm sure everyone would love to have it. But to me, I'm like, I can make it just a little bit better, right? We can just add this one more thing. So now we're adding another chip to it to do just one more little thing, and then that's it. I promised him that's it, no more. Do that, and we're done. And we're going to order circuit boards. I've already ordered the enclosures, so they're coming. They take the longest. They take about 6 weeks. Circuit boards should take a little under that by around 4 weeks. So I'm kind of targeting the mid to late May for a launch date on the Piccolo. But yeah, that one's been a little rough, but it's totally going to be worth it.
Man, you're like a record producer. Oh, guys, we could do another track on that. You can get your vocals a little bit higher, a little bit better. Come on now, let's go. You are your own worst enemy, Rob.
Oh yeah.
All those guys probably sitting there going, "What's he want now?" When they get that email, like, there was.
I know. Oh, not him again. What's he changing now?
Can we block this, man? Just say, hey, we don't know what's going on with this. You're being blocked. So what's been your favorite piece of equipment to build, though? One that you absolutely love that you wouldn't leave the house without, and you hope nobody else will do.
My old school music boxes. I love these little things. I put so much into them. They're like arts and crafts. And I've got little smaller ones.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm still surrounded with them because I love taking them to. This one's kind of a plain Jane one, but you can see the LEDs on that one. I love taking them with me. And interesting story, when I first took one, it was to the McIntyre Villa in Kansas. And I test everything. I have a home office right here where I'm sitting is also where I work my day job. And I will set these on the desk and turn them on and just see what they do.
Yeah.
Right. In theory, they shouldn't do anything until the battery dies. And I would turn them on and they would do nothing because I don't live in a haunted house right now. I don't expect anything to happen. So I took this to the McIntyre Villa, and Steve Skinner, the owner of the Haunted Castle House, was there, and I know him. So he come over and we're talking, and I'm showing him I have my new music box. I turn it on, and I don't know, maybe 30 seconds to a minute after I turn it on, it starts playing music. And I'm still holding it in my hand. And I'm like, well, what the heck? Why is it doing that? And so I turn it off, turn it back on. 30 seconds later, it starts playing music again. They would not stop playing music. And I moved around. I even went into another room, thinking maybe somebody's cell phone, whatever.
Sure.
And it's still playing. And I set it down on this little end table, and it's still playing. And I'm looking at it, and everybody's looking at me like, hey, Rob, your stuff doesn't work. Your stuff's junk, right? And I'm like, I don't get it, because at home it didn't do this. So Steve Skinner leans over and he says, hey, we're trying to have a conversation. Can you please stop touching the box? Like that, it stopped playing and never played again for the rest of the night. So, yeah, I love my little music boxes, folks. The spirits, I've got other stories as well. But, yeah, the spirits seem to love music boxes.
There you go. That's the confirmation right there, folks. Yeah. And also, too, folks, for the ones out there listening, please, if you have any questions for Rob or myself, please put them in the chat room. We'll answer them. We'll talk with you. We're not shy. We don't care. Come on in. So I know the answer to this, probably the company that you went with. But what's your biggest mistake in the field that you've made, or just working on creating a device that you've made, man? What's been the biggest?
Oh, man, that would definitely be working with that Indian company. That's been my biggest one. Yeah, that was painful. But, lesson learned. I was a new entrepreneur, and I was very trusting, and I guess they just took advantage of me that way. And like I said, be warned, they're looking to take advantage of someone else too, because they're scraping Facebook, paranormal ghost hunters, and they're scraping LinkedIn accounts as well for paranormal and ghost hunters. So if you're listed in Facebook or LinkedIn as a paranormal investigator somehow, they will be contacting you. And I would advise you stay far away.
So here's my $1 million question. Since we're both in the paranormal field and investigators, do you like seeing the interaction on these devices from spirit, or do you like getting that EVP?
Oh, wow. I love EVPs, but I guess I love seeing other people get interactions with my devices.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Because that's kind of like, that's like your baby walking, taking their first steps. You're like, oh, my baby can walk, right? You're really happy when somebody else is using. So I love to see these YouTube videos and influencers, and not necessarily influencers, but just other people on YouTube. They're using my devices and they're working. I love to see that. Me personally, I love EVPs for myself. If I catch an EVP, I think that's one of my favorite things. Yeah, because I caught one at the Granger house when I first started going on public hunts, which I don't really do that anymore. But I was out in what they called the carriage house, which is basically like the garage, by myself, doors closed, nobody there. Most people had already left. It was really late. It was well after 3 a.m. Most people had already left. So I set up all of my recording equipment. I'm a musician. You can see the drums there behind me. So I got some, not super high end, but above average recording equipment. And I set it up. I'm sure I looked foolish, but I set it up in there. And I was recording my EVPs. And earlier, one of the mediums said that there was a little boy in there. So I started addressing the little boy, asking a series of questions. And one of the questions was, how old are you? And I caught this Class A EVP of 12 that came through. I mean, as clear as a bell, 12. Answering. And then later, I caught a woman humming. When I was asking him a question, she was starting humming over top of me. And then I got a shush. I guess maybe they were trying to shush the boy or maybe shush me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that all came out of the Granger house. But I just love that because I know I'm in this is the engineering side. I'm in a closed environment by myself. There's no one else there. There's no sound contamination. And I capture these incredible responses to my questions. They're not explainable. So I love that stuff. And that goes back to why I don't really do public ghost hunts anymore, is because I can't get EVPs because it's dang near impossible in a public ghost hunt.
Yeah.
You got people running around being silly. They're doing their TikTok stuff. I had one girl, I was on one, and the medium was in a room and she was doing her thing, setting the vibe for the room. And her phone rings, not the medium, but this other girl. And she picks it up on speakerphone and she's talking to her mom. They're having a full-blown conversation. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Here we are in the dark, lights off. The medium was doing their thing, setting the room, and then you're doing this. I mean, this is so I've stopped going on public ghost hunts. I like it when I get invited to private, ones where a group is going and I get invited to those. I prefer to go on those because they're, they understand that I like to break away and do my own thing. So if they're at one end of the building, I'll break away and go to the other end of the building to do my EVP work and set up my traps. I'll lay out traps with all my gear that I have. And, and by traps, I mean, so if you ever hunted, like for deer hunting, you figure out where the deer is bedding and you figure out where the deer's water source or food source is. And you try to get in the middle of that. Right. So you can catch the path. I kind of see the same thing in ghost hunting. So if they say the spirit is often seen in that back bedroom and then we see it come down the hallway and then we see it over here, I'm like, great, perfect. So I'm going to set up all my gear here, and, which is funny because when I go on some of these public ghost hunts, I will see everybody comes in with their own gear. And I swear to God, I've seen this so many times. They all take out their gear, and I'm thinking, oh, this is great. We are going to just flood this place with gear. No, they all put it on the coffee table. All this gear, all these millimeters, all these K2s, all REM pods, you name it, the Boo Bears, everything on the coffee table. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, it's like
spread this stuff out, You expect the spirit to come over to the coffee table all the time? Spread it out where the spirits are being seen moving about from the kitchen to the bedroom. All right, fine. Put it in the hallway. Put it in the doorway. On the stairs. Put it at the top of the stairs so you catch them coming and going up and down. Don't. It was funny. This coffee table was just packed full of everybody's equipment.
I mean, does a ghost think you're having a yard sale or something?
Exactly.
How much you want for that REM pod right there? I'll give you $5 right now. $5. Let's go.
That's right.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my God. But you're right. It's just the truth. Man. So what's your thoughts on the Epic box so far? When did this start to become a reality building it? Because it's not your typical yes or no device. And
no.
Was this
Probably
device
evolved.
was this device going to be something else in the pre-building stages, or did you just want something very simple to make with
Well,
this?
I start so when I go on, I've got the stuff that I sell that you're familiar with, but I've also got hundreds of other devices that I build, and I put them in cardboard boxes because they're cheaper than these plastic boxes. I can get a cardboard box practically for free. So I put all my circuitry in there, and I built my own data loggers, and I built them for specific things. And so I went for several years, and I was data logging EMF, amplitude, and frequency while I was data logging tribal electric, which is kind of static electric for most people, and charge density, and a few other things as well. And I was logging all of that data. And I have I packed it up for my road trip, but I've got a notebook that I write in, so my data logger logged time, so I'm able to go back and look at it over time for the night. So basically what that turned into is I was able to see events that were unexplained and map out a lot of the environmental stuff. And so I took that, and that was kind of the basis of the Epic box. So I took that and said, okay, if I can get this, let's just started with one light, one LED. If the recipe, if the EMF is just right, the static electricity is just right, the charge density is just right, I'll light this light up. And that should tell me that there's a spirit interacting with it, right? So I took that out to a few places, and we were able to get that to go off. And I thought, okay, so that part of it's working. And then I don't want to give away my Coca-Cola recipe, but I figured out a few things, and I was able to separate and say, okay, if this recipe occurs, the green light will light up. If this recipe occurs, the red light will light up. And that became the basis of the Epic box. So that is how it works. So EMF alone won't set it off. So you can put your phone by it. It's got to be a combination of the three other electronic phenomena, and that's what will set it off. So that does happen in our environment. So you will get little blips and blurps. If they're really fast, ignore those. They're probably just environmental. It's when they flip on and stay on for like a second or so, that one is statistically significant, and I would pay attention to that, especially if it is in conjunction with a question. So if you ask a yes or no question and you get the green light to light up for like a second or 2 seconds,
You got it.
you got something. And it's really fascinating, the videos that I've seen of people with the Epic box. It's like when a spirit, like we were talking about earlier, when it latches onto a device, it's game on at that point, And they don't always latch onto a device. You can throw out 15, 20 things out there to see what they're going to latch onto. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it's amazing when they do.
They're probably like, this again? Don't y'all ever stop?
That's right.
Don't y'all have anything else new to do? Let's get some checkers in here or something. What the hell?
That's right. Yeah, maybe that'll be my next one. I'll figure out a way to play chess with a ghost.
There you go.
And that's really, you kind of nailed it on what I designed for. I designed for interactivity with the spirits. That's all my devices ever since, the original music box, was to get away from that boring, sterile laboratory, like, REM pod. Come over here and touch this REM pod. Well, I wouldn't come back and touch that a second time.
It's like you're playing Family Feud.
Yeah, right. It's like, okay. But with a music box, they seem to want to interact with that a little more. So that's I just went back to my roots, and that's where the Piccolo EMF music box came about.
Has there been a location that you've seen your devices that they've used your devices more than, say, get an EVP? Have you seen anything that your devices have been interacting more with spirits than, say, using those devices and then get an EVP?
Yeah. One in particular was the Haunted Castle House. That was when I first built the ultrasonic motion detector, and I wasn't sure if it would work at all. Right. So I come up with a lot of ideas, and I take them out into the field and I test them Most of them are duds, to be honest with you. They don't work. Some of them turn out to be pretty cool. So the ultrasonic motion detector, I set it up upstairs, second floor on the hallway, shooting down. It's a short hallway. It's probably about 12 feet. So I shot it down the hallway. And at first I was alone up there. So it's just like me. I was going to test my equipment. And then like the whole freaking crowd came up. And then they're walking up and down the hallway and it's going off and people are getting annoyed with it. And so I finally turn it off. And I sat there for a little while and eventually they leave. They go downstairs. So I turn it back on and I'm going to test it. Well, the medium comes up. And the medium says, well, there's something down at the end of that hallway. I'm like, okay. And she says, can you step forward? The ultrasonic motion detector beeped that something moved forward. It read that. And then she said, can you take a step back? And then it beeped that something moved back. And she had to take 2 steps forward. And it was following everything that she asked it to do. And that's when I was like, okay, this could work. This could work in the paranormal field, this ultrasonic motion detector. And that was one that they played with that all night long, which I thought was funny because at first they were all annoyed with it, as they were walking up and down the hallway and it's going off, and they're like, turn that off. And then by the end of the night, they're just like, oh, amazing.
Yeah. So who's been someone that you've looked up to in the paranormal field that makes devices, if anybody possibly?
Probably Gary Galka. I think I would mark him up there because he does similar. I think he's got a similar thought pattern that I do. And with I know he's got the REM pod and that's what he's famous for, but he's also created a lot of other devices besides the REM pod. And they're all devices that are unique in their own way. Bill Chappell, I don't look up to as much. I think he's a charlatan, to be honest with you. I know everybody loves the Ovilus, but he's a guy that doesn't believe in ghosts, but makes ghost hunting equipment. So I have to question that, what his motivation is there. But yeah, I would say Gary Galka.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the SLS. I think it's used for gaming, folks.
It's the artificial intelligence on that is meant to map out a stick figure. So it's going to map out. It's always trying to map out a stick figure. So
and now everything's
careful with it.
And now everything's going to apps on your phone. Stop.
Those are terrible because your phone does not have the correct sensors that the SLS uses. The SLS is a very specific sensor. It's a very expensive sensor, and it does what it does, and it's not on your phone. You don't have that on your phone. You just have a regular camera on your phone. So those are just for entertainment.
Now I have used Spirit Talker just to test it.
I'm not talking about the SLS stuff.
Oh, you're still talking about the SLS. Yeah. But yeah, that's on there too. I've used Spirit Talker. That's hit a few things before, but I'm still iffy on it though. Still iffy, 100%.
I get a little iffy on the apps because your smartphone is a smartphone. Yeah. And just like you use your Alexa or Google Home or whatever, Siri, it's listening always. And I know they say, well, I didn't say that it could listen. Well, you know what? It's still listening.
Oh, yeah.
So how easy would it be for them to write in basically a chat bot, right? You ask a question, Bill, are you here? And it comes back and says, yes. Oh my God, it said yes, right? How do we really know that it's not artificial intelligence that's in the background working that?
Everything is listening.
That's why I'm a little leery on that.
Everything is listening, my friend, because you could sit here and be talking to somebody and get on the computer, go to Facebook or anything, or even eBay, and guess what? There's advertisement of what you were just talking about wanting.
Oh yeah, that's great. I don't have to figure out what my wife wants for Christmas. I can just look at the advertisements I get. I know what she's been searching for.
Did you ever think that one day you would be creating equipment to help the paranormal field? Did you ever think this was going to be possible?
No. Even when I first started making the music boxes, I was like, nobody's going to buy these. And I remember reaching out to several paranormal groups here locally in Iowa, letting them know, hey, I got these. If you're interested, let me know. And only one of those groups responded to me. They were like, yeah, we're interested. And I started working through them. And then, now, of course, everybody and the woodwork comes out and they want
yeah.
the device. I mean, when I say device, they want one free to try out. And I'm like, well, of course you do now. But my quality has gone up as well, you know. So I went from these old wooden boxes that I got at Hobby Lobby to, you know, really high end ABS injection molded, you know, enclosures. So,
Rob, I want to thank you so much for doing this interview with me this evening. This has been fun, man. This is very been awesome. Folks, if you want to get out and order some of this equipment right now, you can go to ghostgeartech.com.
Yep.
The Epic box is already sold out for May. So if you want it, you better go pre-order it now, because who knows how long this is going to be out. So you better go do it. The Piccolo EMF music box, that's going to be available soon as well. Is that correct?
Yep. It should be available towards the end of May.
Okay. So everybody, I hope you all enjoyed this interview. We'll be back next week, and we'll have another great guest on this podcast. So Rob, thank you so much for doing this, man.
Thank you for having me.
Hang on one second.